about how to build a sustainable MIS career. I don't know. I mean, this is kind of personal, and I mean, certainly sustainable because I've been around for a while now. I don't know how successful, but certainly sustainable. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of some of the lessons that I've taken away over the years, and what kind of drives me sometimes. Certainly, if it's about surgery and building a spinal career or career in spine, you know, these 6 T's, you know, it sounds very simple and mundane, but it's really true. Number one is obviously the patient selection, right? And that's where all these things come in that we talked about, and maybe AI as well to a certain extent, but it's really the judgment, and that's what Neil Anand pointed out earlier, is this feel for a patient, you know, because it's not only, it's not black and white, right or wrong, it's really, there's so many nuances in terms of the decision-making process, especially in what we do as spine surgeons. It's totally different from our neurosurgical, you know, if you clip an aneurysm, there's a right or wrong decision or answer, or you have a brain tumor or a heart attack. With spine surgery, there are all these gray zones, right? And I find that the most complicated thing, and it's so difficult to really make a decision. The fun part is the technology. That's what we looked at here, you know, all the different gadgets, the AI, the robotics, the navigation stuff, so much fun to deal with. The stress part is the techniques, because you've got to learn all this. You know, how do you learn it? In the operating room, in the cadaver lab with models, but that's really where the hard work and the labor and the sweat comes in. And then you got to be lucky. You got to have a good teacher. You got to be at the right institution. A lot of the other things you can kind of pick up, but learning those, the surgical, the grunt work, the surgical technique, that's really the challenge. And the principles that what I view the principles in MIS are the idea that you can do a bilateral decompression through a unilateral approach. That comes up all the time with the endoscope, with the tubes, even with open surgery. That you can preserve stability if you do MIS surgery, so you can avoid sometimes fusion surgery. And the whole fascinating idea of indirect decompression, right, that we're trying to understand when does it work, when does it not work. And then obviously the surgical skills that it takes to do all this in the operating room. Teaching and training is kind of what we're doing today here. Research is important, so you got to be involved in research as well. You don't have to write the best papers, but I think if you want to be involved in, become a good surgeon and really have a good practice, at least you got to look at your own results critically and research your own results, because you want to learn, you know, how did my patients do? I mean, you don't have to write a prospective study, but at least you have to have some critical thinking. And then finally, talent, and I think there's no real answer to this. You know, this is, I think a lot of what we do can be taught and learned and trained, and there's from sports, there's, you know, there are parallels there. I mean, it's not all innate talent, but a lot of the things, obviously, you can teach yourself. But those are really the, you know, for me, I try to keep it simple. Those are the 6 principles that I think that really important if you want to embark on any kind of career, but especially as a surgeon, especially with spine surgery, I think. And I would say that the target is probably the most important, followed by the techniques, and then the others. And this relates to this is the talk that I give usually about surgical decision making. How do you make a decision, right? Well, the most important thing is you got to understand the diagnosis. Frequently, and again, that's the problem with spine surgery, that especially in degenerative, that we just don't have a diagnosis. We don't know where the pain is coming from. You know, we talked about that. And we don't even know what pain is. That's the language. Eskimos have 20 words for white. We have 1 word, pain, but we should have 100, because, you know, then maybe it would be easier for us to understand exactly what patients are actually complaining about. So you got to have the accurate diagnosis. Then you got to understand the natural history of the disease. Disc herniations go away on their own. An unstable spondylolisthesis, probably not. So it makes a difference in terms of how we treat that. One we treat more aggressively than the other. And then finally, the impact of your operation on the disease process. And that's really where we shine in MIS, because we can do things through the endoscope or through tubes that other surgeons can't. And that has a huge impact on how we actually treat these patients. In sports medicine, you know, Dr. Watkins talked about that. I mean, sometimes we can do things that just were not possible years ago, and we can therefore do surgeries that are much more accommodating to the patient and allow them to do many more things than before. Anyway, so that's the surgical decision making. For me, this is very important. The technique, the technology part, that's the fun stuff, and you got to be good at that. But at the end of the day, what you really have to do is you have to think about the surgical decision making and kind of where you want your practice to go. And beyond all these technical things, and I'm not going to go into this here, what really drives you then as you kind of embark on your career? And I liked Andrew Chan. He talked about the mountain, Mount Whitney. I think life and spine surgery also is really a mountain, it's not a beach. And the beauty of that is that you have to work hard, you have to climb up, but when you get there, then you can actually look down, you can kind of enjoy, and then on the other side it goes downhill, which is a little bit easier. But it is a mountain, it is not a beach. And I think that for me, that's always an important principle to remember. And spine surgery is a marathon, it's not a sprint. As you get older, you understand that. If you have to spend in the operating room for 40 years, and even wear lead, for example, those are all difficult things to do, and that really strains your system, your health. You got to think about all those things. So how does it affect me? Well, I had three mentors, essentially. I mean, I trained with Phil Steek, who just stepped down as a chairman here. And what I really got out of that experience was these key values that kind of really shaped us in residency, and that all of you are obviously familiar with. But as you get older, you really think about this more and more. Integrity, collegiality, compassion, perseverance, leadership, scientific curiosity, technical superiority. Those are all obvious things, but you really got to keep this in mind. You got to constantly ask yourself, am I adhering to those? And you cannot always do that, but you should at least try. And so that was very important for me, because I worked with him for 25 years, really, just stepped down as a chairman. So obviously that doesn't go unnoticed. I mean, a person like that has an impact on you. The other person that I really always admired and still do, of course, is Volker Sonntag, who was a spine surgeon at the Barrows. He's retired now as well. That's in the operating room a few years ago. And he was amazing. What I learned from him, he was not a minimally invasive surgeon. He was more maximally invasive than most others. But he had a great philosophy when it came to patient assessment, how he dealt with patients, how he dealt with colleagues, his professional career, the residents, fellows, the training. That was all a very, very humble person. And he always stressed the 4 H's, which is hope, honesty, hard work, and humility, as you can see here. And he really lived towards those principles. And it is great to have a mentor like that who you can call up, you can ask questions if you're in a difficult situation or something happens in your professional life where you're really struggling. To have somebody like that to lean on is incredibly worthwhile. Then finally, more from a practical perspective, Joe Maroon was the chairman at Allegheny in Pittsburgh. He really got me he accepted me as a resident into the program. And at that time point, I didn't know him very well, of course, but over the course of now almost 25 years or 30 years, we've really become very, very close friends. And it's really his, the lessons that I've learned from him are really related to the overall, how do you balance your life? He was the president of the CNS in 1986, and he gave a presidential address that obviously I wasn't there for, but he talked about from Icarus to Equanimous, and he talked about balance in a neurosurgeon's life. William Osler, when he talked about equanimity in the late 1800s, he talked more about calmness and stillness and how that enables a physician to find balance so they can provide empathetic care of their patients. Well, Joe talked about more for a neurosurgeon, how can you find balance in your life and stillness that allows you to function as a full-rounded human being. And he referred to the Danforth Square, which most of you, I'm sure, are aware of. And again, this is not a deeply philosophical principle, but it is. I think it is very, very true. That really our well-being, our balance are really based on the fact that we try to balance the proportion of these parts of our lives, namely the physical, the spiritual, the work, and the relations. And when Joe Maroon talked about it, he gave an example of a typical neurosurgeon square where basically the professional axis is obviously way, way longer and everything else kind of is suffering. So, Joe has lectured about this. He wrote his own book, Square One, which is a great book, and really has been living by this for many years. He's a great athlete. He's a great family man. And how did these three people then affect me? Well, when I was interviewing for neurosurgery, back after my fellowship, Phil Steek, who was a frequent, he would always go to Elaine's. Elaine's was this place on the Upper East Side where this big fat lady was running the show, and you could drink and eat there. She was very famous. And Phil asked me one night when I was interviewing, he took me there for an interview, he's like, well, Roger, what drives you? What drives you? And I knew the right answer, of course. I said, neurosurgery, spine surgery, and I want to operate as much as possible. But then what I really thought was, in the back of my mind, I thought, it's actually not true. What really drives me is, adventure. I like exploration and adventure. If I read a book, it's about exploration and adventure. I had the good fortune as a medical student with a friend of mine. We crossed the Sahara Desert a bunch of times and had all types of adventures. I love skiing. I love hanging out with my kids, of course. That's actually really what drives me. If you really ask me, I love operating. I love taking care of patients. But if I really had to tell you what is really my passion, what's the book that I read in the middle of the night, it's about adventure and skiing and so forth. But you can't really do that as a neurosurgeon, right? You cannot really admit to that. So what do? So, I came across at some point, I was reading this book by Erling Kagge. Erling Kagge is a Norwegian. He's a really adventurer. He's a lawyer, art dealer, all types of things. But he's the first one who accomplished the 3 poles. He walked to the North Pole, the South Pole, and Mount Everest. And in one of his books called Walking, he talked about Arne Næss, who was another Norwegian, a Norwegian philosopher and a mountaineer, actually, who passed away. But Arne Næss talked a lot about deep ecology, but also about how to live your life and how to balance your life. And Arne Næss talked about a formula, and we are simple, or I'm a simple person. I love formulas, right? What's the formula for happiness and for well-being? Well, Arne Næss put it very simple. Well-being equals glow or passion to the square divided by physical and psychological pain. Well, if you think about this, this means that the level of well-being is proportional to the square of the level of passion. So with sufficient passion, any amount of pain is overcome. And then when I read that, I thought, that's perfect for a neurosurgeon, right? Our life, we do so many things. It's so painful what we deal with every day. You just need a little bit of passion to outweigh that. And it doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit of passion because it's to the square, right? So what that means to me is that I love neurosurgery, but the daily life of a neurosurgeon can be very, very painful. You get a lot out of it, but it is painful, right? To get up in the morning, complications, to deal with all these patients. So you got to do something in addition to neurosurgery that outweighs the pain, and you don't have to do a lot of that, but just enough so by the square it actually outweighs the pain. So during COVID, I started reading more about exploration and Shackleton and what he went through when he went to the Antarctic and had to rescue his 28 people that he got lost with. And then I read about photography and exploration, and I got really interested in photography and exploration. And that's kind of became a passion of mine, even before COVID, for a long time, because it's one of those things that combine art with adventure, and for me, it's a perfect outlet of what I do in the middle of the night when I come home and I don't know what else to do. Exploration, waned at the end of 1900s, the 20th century. That's really when photography came up. And there was a short time period when there were explorers who were also photographers. And it's only for a few years where Vittorio Sella was an Italian photographer who was very famous for his landscape photography in the early 1900s, and he traveled the world to Alaska, to the Himalayas, to Africa. Was one of the first ones. Took the first picture of Mount Everest in 1899. And Thesiger was a British explorer who crossed the empty quarter. Was the first one to cross the empty quarter in Oman and Saudi Arabia. And these both individuals were great explorers, but also photographers. So I really kind of delved into that, and I made it my goal to collect their photography, collect their books, and write a book about it. And that's what I did. I wrote a book, I published it, and I had a few exhibitions on these works of art, the photography and the books. The beauty is that this is not, it's not that expensive, right? Because there are not many people who collect this kind of stuff. But it is an adventure in its own right, and it's something that really, I draw parallels between their lives and what I do in the operating room every day. And to me, this is really kind of the glow that I need to overcome the stress and sometimes the pain that you have to go through every day when you go to clinic. So for me, this is really kind of what enables me to, I think, provide better care to my patients, because I hope I'm more balanced. And whatever it is that you do, you could be a chef, maybe you like cooking, maybe you like, you collect stamps or cars. I know Avelino collects Ferraris, and Jesus goes with the Pope, he hangs out with the Pope, whatever it is. But I think you have to remember this equation, because this is really the key to success, because passion to the square outweighs any type of pain. So, or in other words, then, what that also means, though, the goal in life, in my opinion, is not to reduce pain. The goal is actually to maximize passion. Not maximize, but at least increase it to the extent that it kind of outweighs the pain. So that's kind of my formula for a successful life as an MIS spine surgeon. Thank you so much.